Keeper of the Lost Cities, Neverseen, Chapter 11. Apprentice, Sophie whispered, not sure what to feel. Relief? Hope? Fear? Yeah, it was mostly fear. And then, of course, there was the shame, mostly because of all the fear. Apprentice had allowed his mind to be broken in order to protect her, and healing him was the only way to be sure Alden's sanity would never shatter again. But Apprentice had been trapped in his madness for 13 years, and his whole life had fallen apart during that time. His wife had died, faded away during some sort of light leaping accident. His orphaned son, Wiley, had been adopted. And even though Sir Tiergan, Sophie's telepathy mentor, had surely been a good father, Wiley was now all grown up. A prodigy in Foxfire's elite levels, having spent most of his life never knowing his dad. That was a lot of heartbreak for someone to wake up to. What if Prentice shattered all over again once he faced those cold realities? Whatever concerns are causing the crease between your brows, Mr. Forkle told her, we do share them. But we cannot stall Prentice's rescue any longer. He is too important. And we're not saying this because we miss our friend, Granite added, clearing his throat several times. We've also long suspected that Prentice's mind is hiding something crucial. It would explain why he called Swan Song before he was captured. Swan Song was a code the Black Swan used if they feared their life was in danger. Prentice used the code the day before his capture, Mr. Forkle said. I've always wondered how he knew they were coming for him. As have I, Granite agreed. I'd been monitoring Alden's investigations most carefully, and he'd had no suspicion towards Prentice whatsoever. Then Prentice called Swansong, and suddenly he was arrested. Della looked away, twisting and retwisting her graceful fingers. Granite turned to Sophie, his stony eyes almost pleading. No one is more aware of the risks that come with healing Prentice than we are. But don't you think it's worth it to find out what happened and to give him a chance at happiness? Sophie pictured Prentice the way she'd seen him last, locked in a lonely cell, rocking back and forth, muttering to himself, drooling. Okay, she whispered, not sure if her heart wanted to race or explode. But isn't he still in exile? We're working on a plan, Granite said, and it's going to take everyone's help. Biana, you'll need to be able to hold your finish for far longer than you currently can. Dex, we managed to get our hands on one of the bolts used on the cells. We'll need you to master opening it quickly and silently. Sophie and Fitz will need your minds at their absolute strongest, and we've prepared notebook exercises to further your cognate training. And Keith, we have several empathy books that you need to familiarize yourself with. Books? Keith asked. You're giving me books? Never underestimate the power of the pages, Mr. Forkle told him. Miss Foster would not exist without the decades I spent researching genetics. And you have just as much to learn about your ability. It will take us a few days to make the arrangements for this mission, Granite added. But when we're ready, we'll need to move quickly. So tonight, prepare your minds to swear fealty to our organization. And tomorrow, get ready to work. Well, that was interesting, Dex said as they climbed the stairs to their tree houses. Sophie had thought she was too nervous to eat, but when they reached the gazebo in the center of the bridge, their dinners smelled amazing. She couldn't tell what was in Call's famous Starkflower stew, but Mr. Forkle was right. It truly was life-changing. Every bite felt like home, warming her from the tips of her toes to the top of her head and making her feel safe, happy, and loved. Was anyone expecting the Black Swan to be like that? Fitz asked, as he mopped up the last of his gravy with a piece of crusty bread. You mean secretive and stubbornly unhelpful? Sophie mumbled. I guess I should have, but I hoped it'd be easier. She'd agreed to their plan to help Prentice, and she didn't regret it, but she didn't believe that should be their only focus. She wasn't ready to drop this idea on trying to find the boy who disappeared through Exilium's records. And she wanted to find out more about the ogres and the Wildwood colony, but she wasn't sure if it was safe to discuss any plans with her friends. They were in the Black Swan's territory now, so they were probably being watched. I do think they might be onto something with the code names, Keith said as she searched all the shadows. In fact, after I swear fealty, I should have you all call me Emo. Fitz can be Brainwave, Bianna and Della can be Blink and Wink, Dex, your gears, and Foster? That's tricky. Maybe Anima? Unless you want to be Cognate. Or is Fitz the only one allowed to call you that? Sophie sighed. You do realize you basically agreed to merge your brain with his, right? He pressed. You'll be Fitzfee, or SoFitz. Personally, I'd go with SoFitz. Better make it clear you're the boss. And you're just jealous, Fitz said, with his best attempt at a smirk. Keith shrugged. Team Foster Keith will always be cooler. Yeah, but SoFitz will be unstoppable, Fitz said, pushing back his chair. I can't wait to start training tomorrow. Sophie tried to feel the same way, reminding herself of all the important reasons she'd agreed to the cognate thing. But her brain kept circling back to Bianna, asking, don't cognates have to share all their secrets with each other? She was sure Keith could feel her panic, but instead of teasing her, he said, So, when are you going to tell me about what you guys are hiding? It's something about the gnomes, right? Don't think I didn't notice all those nervous glances. Bianna couldn't have looked guiltier. We just wanted to make sure it was true before we said anything, she mumbled. And it's good we waited, Sophie added. Mr. Forkle gave me better information. She explained their worry about the elven footprints outside the Wildwood colony, and how 2 teenagers had made them, not the Neverseen. So, you thought you had evidence of my mom poisoning the gnomes, and you decided not to tell me? Keith looked so betrayed. Sophie wished she could think of something better to say, then it turned out to be nothing. That's still not cool. We're going to find out a ton of awful things about my mom as we go along. I don't want to have to worry about everyone hiding stuff from me. You know how that feels, Foster. You hate it as much as I do. Sophie sighed. Okay, from now on, we'll share. Keith nodded, but he didn't look happy, and his frown deepened when Della pulled Fitz closer for a goodnight hug. Come on, Dex told Keith. We need to brainstorm ways to punish Wonder Boy. That's right, Keith said, perking up a bit. We'll form our own empath technopath cognitum. We can be Keefex. Why not Deef? Dex asked. Because Deef sounds lame. You guys are lame, Fitz said as he trotted behind them up the stairs. Are you sure it's smart to leave the boys alone? Bianna asked as she followed Sophie and Della to their treehouse. Smart isn't the word I'd use, Della admitted, but we'll sleep better than they will. The gnomes had been busy finishing while they were gone, hanging glass orbs filled with swirling flashes of color all over their treehouse. The effect was breathtaking, even if it also made Sophie squirmy when she realized the dots of light were some sort of iridescent flying bug. Della's bedroom had also been finished. It looked like a presidential suite, complete with a private bathroom and a closet full of radiant gowns. Sophie and Bianna had new clothes too, and this time there were pants. Also, the world's weirdest pajamas. Sophie had no idea why the Black Swan would choose a purple furry onesie with feet. It was quite comfortable when she put it on, but she was glad her windows had thick drapes, so no one could see her padding around the room. Next, she needed to find a place to hide Kendrick's cash, but her options were limited. Her desk only had one drawer, and her canopied bed sat on an elevated platform with no space underneath. Her best option was to tuck it in a hidden spot in the strap of her purple backpack. The cash barely fit, but the lump wasn't noticeable, and she slipped the imparter into another pocket and dumped out everything else. Her eyes welled with tears when she found Grady and Adeline's notes. They'd tied him to Ella, the bright blue stuffed elephant she couldn't sleep without. We will never be more than a few words away. Love, Mom and Dad. Sophie wasn't sure what they meant until she noticed the silver box they included. Inside was a teal memory log Alden had given her to record all her dreams and triggered memories, and her illegal, unregistered spy ball from the Black Swan. Her hands shook as she picked up the palm-sized silver sphere and whispered, "Show me Grady and Adeline Ruin." The spy ball turned warm, and a bright flash filled the orb, painting the sphere with an image of her adoptive parents. They sat with Alden in his curved office with sleek glass walls. Half the room was made of windows overlooking the lake, and the other half was a vibrant aquarium. Sophie knew the room all too well. She'd been in it often, usually when Alden needed to have an unpleasant conversation. But Grady and Edeline didn't look upset. In fact, all three of them were reading long, yellowed scrolls. More scrolls were piled on the desk, the floor, every flat surface in the room. Sophie couldn't tell what they were working on, but it looked important. "Stay safe," she whispered, tracing her fingers over their faces. She watched for several minutes more, wishing one of them would look up, but they didn't. She let the image blink away. She realized then, with a twinge of guilt, that she hadn't checked on her human family in weeks, maybe even months. She'd been so distracted by all the huge problems she'd been facing, she'd forgotten. "Show me Connor, Kate, and Natalie Freeman," she told the spyball, using the names she wasn't supposed to know. The elves had changed her family's identities after they'd erased Sophie from their lives, fearing that she might try to contact them. Being erased had been Sophie's choice, her final gift to spare her family a lifetime of grieving a missing child. The only reason she knew who they were was because the Black Swan gave her the top-secret information. The spyball turned warm again, and when the image appeared, it showed 3 different scenes. It must have been daytime where her family lived, because her dad was sitting at a desk in a windowed office. Her mom was driving somewhere, and her sister was doodling in her notebook in a classroom. The normal, everyday moments looked so foreign compared to the things Sophie was now used to seeing. "Is that your family?" a soft voice behind her asked, and Sophie dropped the spyball. They rolled across the floor, stopping at Callah's feet. "Sorry," the tiny gnome said, retrieving the spyball and frowning at the images. Everything looked so gray in their world. "Humans don't have a lot of green in their cities," Sophie agreed. "Such a pity," Callah handed back the gadget. "Plants are the best for soothing. In fact," she hummed a song under her breath, and the vine growing over Sophie's canopied bed bloomed with deep purple flowers. "I know you struggle with nightmares," she told Sophie. "So I planted these reverie bells to give you sweet dreams. The secret is in their scent." Sophie closed her eyes and inhaled. The smell reminded her of gardenias, with a hint of vanilla, and something spicier too. Maybe ginger? She could feel it settle into her muscles, making her shoulders relax. "Thank you," she said. "It is my honor." Callah wove a loose strand of vine carefully in with the others. "I must confess, it feels very strange to talk to you after all these years." "Years?" Sophie repeated. Callah smiled her green-toothed smile. "I know this might be hard to believe, but I've been part of Project Moonlark since the beginning.